See, a lot of people think, well, if I'm a Christian and I trust God and I do what he wants, somehow nothing that happens to everyone else is going to happen to me. So when a recession hits, we just think that magically everyone else is going to get hosed and my finances are going to be great. Not necessarily. You think that if I love God, that I'm not going to have fights with my spouse. There's not going to be struggles in our marriage. Or if I love God, my kids are just going to turn out and be just super perfect. And then you had kids. You see, God, we have to understand this. If you are someone that stuck this stake in here, you got to know this, that God will protect you and I through life, but not from it. He said you're going to struggle. You're going to suffer. There's going to be moments. As a matter of fact, Paul understood this clearly. Think about it. You know why he was able to be so calm? If you turn over into 2 Corinthians, where's it at? Chapter 11. He starts describing his many trials. In verse 24, he starts describing what he's been through. And remember this. This is what he's been through serving God. This is what he went through to serve God. He's doing exactly what God called him to do, and this is what happened to him. 5 different times the Jewish leaders gave me 39 lashes. They would do 40 minus 1 because they noticed more often than not the type of whip they used, that if you went over 40, the person usually died. So they did 40 minus 1, one short of most likely killing you. 5 times Paul had the flesh on his back and his ribs ripped right off of him. 3 times he was beaten with rods. Once he was stoned, but he said that was in college and he didn't really inhale. Sorry. I make fun of it, but that's probably the worst thing that happened to him. They picked up big rocks and threw it at his head. 3 times I was what? Shipwrecked. This wasn't the first time he was shipwrecked. Serving God. 3 times. Maybe that's why he said, guys, I don't think we should push on. I'm thinking he's remembered the other 2 times. You know, if we go out of there, man, I really, really, really don't want to be shipwrecked again. 3 times. And look at this. Once, I spent a whole night and a day adrift at sea. You ever been out in the ocean? You ever went out on a boat in the ocean and watched the water get darker and darker and darker? And then touch it? Could you imagine being out in the middle of the sea? Cold, stormy, sitting there for a day and a half. I wonder what his conversations with God were like. I wonder if he had one of those really God moments. Really? Really? I'm sitting here holding onto this plank because I was following where you told me to go. 3 times. Shipwrecked. I've traveled on many long journeys. I've faced danger from rivers and from robbers. So he's had a hard time getting across the river. He's been robbed. I've faced danger from my own people, the Jews, as well as from the Gentiles. I have faced danger in the cities and the deserts and on the seas. I have faced danger from men who claim to be believers but are not. That means I've even faced danger in the church. I have worked hard and long and during many sleepless nights. I have been hungry. I've been thirsty and have often gone without food. I have shivered in the cold without enough clothing to keep me warm. Then besides all this, I have the daily burden of my concern for all the churches. Who is weak without my feeling that weakness? Who is led astray and I do not burn with anger? He says in the end, I've been through all that and I did it for you. I did it to lead people to Jesus. You see, here's the point. 2 quick things on this that I just want to make out of this idea to help us understand that God will protect you through life but not from it. It's there in your notes. First, Paul not only staked his life in the Most High, but he became a stakeholder in the Most High's purpose. Not only did he say, yeah, God, I'm going to trust you for who you said. You're my refuge, my hope. You're all these things. You do all these things for me. You love me. But he knew that putting that stake in the ground also meant he was holding a stake. He said, I have got to be a stakeholder in what God is doing. I've got to be a stakeholder in his purpose. And he was willing to do that. He knew that. Second things, in times of storms, as we just read about his life, Paul had learned this. He would stay faithful to God's plan. He would stay faithful to God's plans. So we need to realize that if you are suffering through life, God will protect you. And in those times of storms, you need to stay faithful to God's plan. And if you are, you will see his power. You know, there was a miraculous power that saved him and everybody from that shipwreck. But all it did was save him from dying. It didn't save him from the shipwreck. And in there, I think, is the biggest crux that most of us struggle when life doesn't make sense, when we're trying to serve God and something happens that's unpleasant to us. We want God's power to protect me from the shipwreck. And God says, no. I have a bigger perspective than you. I have a bigger plan than you. Protect me from the shipwreck. No, I'll protect you through it. And that's where we need to be. We need to stay faithful to that plan. We need to take a stakeholder in what he is doing in his purpose for my life. That's really what helped Paul was he knew he didn't worry about what happened to him because he was a stakeholder in what God's purpose was.